Welcome back. Joining us in the studio is Mikolaj Naparolski, an author and freelance copywriter who spent 3 years as the head of marketing and public relations for the Qatar Museums Authority, which inspired his recent book, God Willing, How to Survive Expat Life in Qatar. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me on.
That's awesome. So firstly, tell us a bit about your career and how it took you to Qatar.
Well, my background, I guess, is in journalism and editorial work. So I was working in advertising, I was working as a freelance journalist, and I was in Melbourne, and so I was given the opportunity to go over to the Middle East. An old friend of mine was working over there. He came back to town, we got talking. I'd always wanted to see the Middle East, and so when I had the opportunity to go over there, I couldn't resist. So, yeah.
How would you describe social and political life in Qatar to someone who's never been there before?
Well, look, I mean, before I went over there, I thought it was going to be a very dry and dull experience. I was going to go over there to do some work, save some money, work on some interesting projects, and come home.
Yeah.
But what I found was it was far more interesting than any of the guidebooks or any of that had actually explained. I mean, obviously there's a very vibrant culture there, a very old culture, but just in terms of expat life, it's a very strange culture of hotel bars and shopping malls, and this kind of very different lifestyle that we have here to Australia. And so I guess the book talks about the fact that, it's not what it seems. It seems like a very conservative culture and lifestyle. And while there's certainly part of it, there's a lot more to it. And especially as a Western expat, there's an underbelly to all of that. And the book kind of talks about some of the excess and some of the kind of the lifestyle that goes alongside being an expat over there.
Yeah. So did you delve into the culture much, or did you stay strictly Western when you were there?
To be honest, I was very much the typical kind of horrible Western expat.
Yeah.
In that we went out to hotel bars, we lived this kind of life of excess, and so we would do things like you'd find yourself getting picked up in town cars to go to your hotel, to go for drinks on a Monday night, and that kind of stuff like that. And that was expat life over there. I mean, that was the kind of expat lifestyle you could have over there. There's obviously other parts to that. So I mean, one of the more interesting experiences we had was going to the inland sea. So basically between Qatar and Saudi, there's like this inland sea. It's about 2 hours drive south of the capital. And there's only about 500 meters of water that separates two countries.
Wow.
And so on the Qatar side, you've got rolling dunes.
Yeah.
And on the Saudi side, you've got these kind of amazing mountains. And so you can drive down there, you can pitch your tents, and I guess on the Qatar side at least, you can start a bonfire and drink tequila and do all that kind of stuff like that. But the thought that there's very little that separates you from Saudi, where those kinds of things would be very much frowned upon and would get you in a whole lot of trouble, So there was this contrast between this kind of Western expat excess and the kind of more, I guess, localized things you could look into as well.
Yeah. So what was it like working for the Museums Authority? Like, what did your job on a day-to-day basis entail?
So look, originally I was over there to work on, I guess, the communications and marketing side of things for exhibitions.
Yep.
And I guess what Qatar was trying to do was really establish its soft power. So what their kind of aim was to establish the country as a hub for the arts and for museums and for education. And so they were like pumping billions of dollars into all these museums. And so to have things like Damien Hirst and Takeshi Murakami and these kind of ridiculously lavish exhibitions you wouldn't be able to have elsewhere in the world. So my job, I guess, was to look after the communications side of things there. And eventually I ended up looking after marketing for the Orientalist Museum.
Wow.
So I was over there for 3 years working on these exhibitions. And what happened in the end was a lot of this was funded, obviously, on the price of oil and gas.
Yeah.
And so what happened was around 2015, the price of oil went from $100 a barrel to $30 a barrel. And so all the money and the budgets allocated for these exhibitions disappeared. And so all of a sudden, we had 5 museums planned, and they were all going to be like these lavish billion-dollar type of exhibitions. That all dried up. That all disappeared. And this whole generation of expats who went over there to work in the arts sector found themselves basically at a desk with a job, but nothing to do. And so, so between 2012, 2015, museum professionals from around the world kind of gathered in Qatar, worked in these events, and they all kind of gradually disappeared around 2015.
Yeah.
And
So when you weren't working, what else did you do in your spare time?
So I guess I had a close-knit group of friends over there, And that's the other thing about working in the Gulf is that, as opposed to say Melbourne or Brisbane or wherever, where you've got the same friends since high school,
Yeah.
everyone over there is an expat, and so
Yeah.
no one knows everyone, and so it's super easy to meet people. And so it's great because you arrive in the country and, you know, your friends from work will invite you out for drinks or whatever it might be. And you'll end up with this kind of, you know, group of friends who always hangs out together, always goes out together. And so we had this kind of very close-knit expat community over there.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is so surreal, coming from a, you know, suburban Western background to
Yeah.
suddenly be living this kind of lifestyle over there.
That would be incredible, just
Yeah, it
walking
was.
into a community in a completely foreign place.
Which is actually lovely, and I guess that's one of the things too, is that you can meet these amazing people,
Yeah.
and you know you try and stay in contact afterwards.
Oh,
But I guess
that's
a few
lovely.
places in the world, like if you go to say like New York or London, right, it's the same thing. Everyone's got their friends, everyone's got their networks,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to sort of, you know, have that community. Whereas places like Doha and Qatar and the Middle East, yes, have this kind of almost a group of friends you can pick up along the way. So yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that stands out, like any awesome experiences that you've had that you'd like to mention?
Look, there's a couple. I guess one of the stories I like telling my friends is we'd work on these amazing exhibitions, and one of the big ones was for Damien Hirst.
Yeah.
So he had like a big retrospective of his work, and so it's a kind of lavish function. And some days I was helping to work on the marketing for it, and I look over, and I see this beautiful woman in the crowd, and I'm like, that looks like Naomi Campbell, but she's kind of shorter than you'd imagine Naomi Campbell to look like.
Yeah.
And one of my friends is like, oh, that actually is Naomi Campbell. I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough.
Oh, that's
And
a very
so
casual response.
you've got you know, Damien Hirst, you've got Naomi Campbell, you've got these kind of random European aristocrats all gathering in Qatar for this exhibition. And we walk outside, and there's a helicopter that's going to take them all to a pop-up Prada shop in the desert for the after party.
Very lavish.
And so that was kind of stuff that would happen all the time. So like, oh, that's amazing. We weren't invited to the after party. We just had to watch the helicopter take off.
You have your expat friends. You can
Exactly.
hang out
Yeah,
with
yeah.
them.
But so yeah, things like that. You
Yeah.
never see that in Australia.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And obviously, the budget for those kinds of excessive launches
Yeah.
just doesn't exist here. But yeah,
Lastly, would you work in the Middle East again?
it depends. Look, I went over there initially for a year was the
Yeah.
plan, and I ended up loving it. I had a great group of friends. We worked on some amazing projects, and so look, while the country was booming, and while they're investing all this money in museums, it was amazing. And I guess one of the reasons that I liked working over there was the fact that you did feel that you were contributing to something bigger.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a job. It was, okay, we are helping to build education and museum infrastructure in this country. And so that was really rewarding. And so I guess if there was a chance to do something along those lines again, then yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah? In
Yeah.
Qatar again?
We'll see. I mean, I'm not sure how they feel about the book itself, so there may be some issues there, but I'd love to head back to some of the other regions, yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately we're running out of time, but going to have to go to a break. But thank you so much for coming on and
You're
sharing
welcome.
your experiences. You make me want to go to Qatar now.
You should definitely try.
God Willing, How to Survive the Expat Life is currently available online and in bookstores. When we get back, we'll share some tips from travelling couple about the best things to see, do and eat when in Turkey.